So, I recently posted a video talking all about the upcoming anime season of summer 2025. And in that video, I talked about all of the upcoming anime projects, be they TV shows or movies that I'm excited for in the summer 2025 season. And while usually the perception to these videos is really good and people are just talking in the comments about how excited they are for the upcoming anime season, for some reason the most dominant comment I got in this video was about an upcoming anime project known as Lord of Mysteries, which was an aptly titled project at the moment for me because the Lord of Mysteries was a mystery to me. But after doing a little deep diving, I came to the realization that Lord of Mysteries is a Chinese web novel being adapted into an anime in this upcoming anime season, summer 2025. And previously to the posting of the last video we posted on this channel, I had never heard anything about it. However, no one ever said I wasn't susceptible to internet bullying, because the first thing that I did when I realized that the entirety of my comment section wanted me to talk about the Lord of Mysteries was, well, read all 1,400 chapters of it. Well, 1,432 actually. And wow, is this a dense universe? See, here's the thing. Web novels have never really been my thing. In fact, this is the first web novel I've ever read in its entirety, because I like pictures. However, after committing the entirety of the last 2 days to reading this web novel, I'm starting to understand why people read these things. See, Lord of Mysteries is a steampunk, Lovecraftian mystery novel packed to the gills with occultism, with a rich and well-fleshed out power system, an incredible MC, and a slow, gradual increase to the scale of combat in the universe that makes you feel as though you're stepping through a wide-open door into a fully lived-in world. It was an incredible read, but God, is it a complicated book. And thus I have some fears that those who haven't read the web novel that are gonna jump right into this universe might get a little lost, and I don't want that. And thus today, I want to prime those of you who maybe heard Lord of Mysteries was coming out in this upcoming anime season and had some interest in watching it, but haven't read any of the web novel. I want to ensure that you have the best possible understanding of how the universe works, how the powers in the universe work, and who the main characters are and what their motivations are, so you can jump into this universe with the best possible set of circumstances to enjoy it. And thus, today, we're talking everything that you need to know before the Lord of Mysteries. But before we step into this alternate Victorian era, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you guys are looking for one additional Nick video a week, guys, you can find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We're on to the Forest of Death. So let's start this video off in the way that we tend to start these kinds of videos off, by answering the easy questions. So, what is the Lord of Mysteries? Well, the Lord of Mysteries is originally a Chinese web novel written by an anonymous author who goes by the name of Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. Yes, that's the direct translation from Chinese. Now, the first book itself, Lord of Mysteries, is done and features 1,432 chapters. And for those of you who have never read a web novel before, thinking about 1,432 chapters and thinking this might be the literal longest story in existence, it's not. Chapters in web novels are like 3 to 5 pages max. And thus, while this is a pretty long story, it's not like War and Peace. To put some perspective into how short the chapters are, the entirety of the Lord of Mysteries consists of 8 volumes. And season 1, which is anticipated to have 13 to 15 episodes, is going to cover an entire volume, the first volume. And thus Tencent, the people who run basically all media in China, have confirmed to us that the Lord of Mysteries anime is going to have at least 5 seasons, as some of the seasons may go up to 24 episodes and eat up 2 volumes of content. So all in all, the entirety of the Lord of Mysteries, all 1,432 chapters, can fit into about 100 or so episodes of anime, which is long, but when you hear 1,432 chapters, I don't want you to think One Piece. Anyways, let's dive into the actual universe itself. Lord of Mysteries follows a character by the name of Klein Moretti, a history graduate in the fictional city of Tingen, which exists in an alternate parallel universe version of 19th century Europe, the Victorian era. However, what makes this alternate universe alternate is some heavy, and I mean heavy, steampunk elements. But there's also Lovecraftian monsters and potions that grant powers and 220 subclasses that people can fall into to accomplish their own unique kind of power. And thus, while the time period does align technically with the time period that happened on Earth, the world itself is drastically different in pretty much all imaginable ways from our world. But anyways, back to our main character, Klein. See, Klein is a regular person. That is, until he's killed. However, Klein is resurrected, which is why a lot of people talk about this universe as an isekai. And when Klein is resurrected, he's brought back with the knowledge of something known as the Gray Fog. And here's the thing. Understanding the Gray Fog is pretty much the most important thing outside of Beyonder Paths to understand if you want to enjoy this universe. See, the Gray Fog is an outer dimensional space that exists above reality, beyond the influence of things like gods, fate, or time. And yes, there are gods in this universe. We'll talk about that in a second. See, the reason that the Gray Fog is so incredibly important is because fate is an incredibly important topic in the Lord of Mysteries. Things like divination and fate tracking allow for powerful people and gods to keep their eyes on all of the people they want to on Earth. But these godlike beings can do more than just track you. They're able to erase you from existence in an instant should they want to. However, in the Gray Fog, Klein is immune to any of these whims of the gods. He cannot be touched, he cannot be altered, he cannot be tracked. And thus Klein's access to the Gray Fog is one of his most important abilities. It operates as a base of operations and a throne room that Klein can invite his allies into to make sure that they are also unaffected by deities and outer gods. But Klein's access to the Gray Fog is also very symbolic of his ascent to possible godhood. But what do I mean by that? Because I've been throwing around the word deities and gods a lot. And that's because Lord of Mysteries throws around the word gods a lot. See, Klein has access to the Gray Fog most likely because of how he dies. I'm not going to give you too many details on that because the anime will show you it, but because of the way that Klein dies, part of his soul clings on to the Gray Fog. But why? Well, mostly it's because Klein is resuscitated into one of the Beyonder Paths. See, the Beyonder Paths are the power system of the Lord of Mysteries universe. And in total, there are 22 Beyonder Paths. And these Beyonder Paths work more or less like classes in D&D or any RPG game. That is to say that individual paths have individual abilities that make them strong and or weak against certain individuals. But within each and every single one of these 22 Beyonder Paths are something known as sequences. Now, sequences are basically just levels that go from 9 to 1, 9 being the weakest, 1 being the strongest. And therefore, within the confines of every single Beyonder Path, you can have a sequence between the numbers of 9 and 1 that indicate how strong you are within that individual path that you embody. Now, the path that we know the most about is the Seer Path, which is Klein's path, and also the reason that he has access to the Gray Fog. See, the Seer Path grants those who are on it abilities such as divination, illusion, and fate manipulation. See, seers are secretive and inquisitive. There's a reason at the highest level of the Seer Path you become known as the Lord of Mysteries, as seers are usually not only mysterious themselves, but also usually those tasked with unveiling the mysteries of others. But how does one acquire a Beyonder Path, and how does one level up their sequences? Well, it all revolves around potions and, rather interestingly, playing the role. See, let's say hypothetically I wanted to become a seer like Klein. I would have to consume a potion that was in alignment with the path that I was trying to get on. In this circumstance, it's seer. However, just drinking a potion isn't enough, as after consuming a potion, you have to digest the potion. And you don't do this by taking 2 Tums, unbuckling your belt, and scooching down to the couch, and hoping that your stomach stops hurting in time for you to actually go play football outside like it's Thanksgiving. No, rather, you digest the potion by living in line with the identified characteristics of the path you're trying to get on. So what does this mean? Well, we just identified that seers themselves are mysterious, stoic, and usually committed to unveiling the mysteries of others. They live in secrecy and are steeped in mysticism. And thus, in the simplest terms and simplest way of possibly explaining it, in order to ingest the potion that would put you on the Beyonder Path of the seer, you have to begin essentially living like a seer. You see, because hypothetically, it would be a terrible idea if I consumed a potion to become the seer. I am not mystic, I am not secretive. I don't explore my soul to try and find spiritual awakening, and I definitely don't try to answer the mysteries of those around me. I would actually most likely want to consume a potion that would put me online with the Spectator Path, which focuses more on psychology, persuasion, and observation. See, because if hypothetically I did consume the seer potion in hopes of becoming a Seer Path Beyonder, I would probably fail my digestion. What happens if I fail my digestion? Do I pee out the potion like I took too many vitamins? Do I have to chug Pepto-Bismol in hopes the potion will flush out of me? No, unfortunately, it's neither of those things. See, if you fail the potion digestion, you either go mad or die, insanity or death, and therefore the consumption of a potion is actually kind of perilous, and one has to move very intentionally after the consumption of a potion to make sure that their acting falls within the confines of the Beyonder Path that they put themselves on. And thus those in the Red Priest Beyonder path need to be insane, warmongering arsonists. And those in the Seer path need to be mysterious, elusive, hard to track down mystics who live their lives trying to unveil the mysteries of the world. And once you fall off that path, well, GG's. I hope you enjoy being that exact kind of person for, well, the rest of your life. Now, this is kind of just what's necessary in order to join a Beyonder path in the first place. Rising through the sequences is a bit more complicated, as it usually requires combining powers from the Beyonder path in order to achieve higher levels of sequences, or even sometimes rituals. That's all some pretty high-level knowledge that I don't really think you need access to right now, but we will do a more in-depth video on the power system of this universe if this video does well. But speaking of high-level powers, at the end of every single path, that is to say, at the highest level of sequences, there exists a godlike being. See, sequence 1 isn't actually the highest sequence that one can have in a path, but once again, that's high-level information you don't necessarily need right now. But it is important to know, at the end of each of the 22 Beyonder paths exists a godlike being, somebody who's achieved the pinnacle of power within the confines of that individual path. And thus, this is where our conversation of the concept of the Fool comes into play, because here's the thing. As you head into this universe, you're going to hear one term over and over and over again. Not only from the universe, but also from the fans, and that is the Fool. Now, the Fool is something that's unique to Klein. See, every single sequence rank within the confines of a path does have a title. From 9 through 1 in the Seer path, title-wise goes Seer, Clown, Magician, Faceless, Nimble-Right Master, Miracle Invoker, Attendant of Mysteries, Uniqueness, and then Ancient Scholar, with Ancient Scholar being sequence 1 in the Seer path and hypothetically therefore being as strong as one can get in the Seer path. Now, once again, that's not entirely accurate, but we'll talk about that much later. Now, if you're listening to those 9 sequence titles, you realize that none of them were the Fool. In fact, the Fool seems like a weird thing to call somebody in the Seer path, a path dedicated to gathering information and solving mysteries. And therefore, the reason that the Fool doesn't exist as a sequence title in the Seer path, and yet Klein is known as the Fool, is because Klein makes up the role of the Fool. It's a persona that he invents and gives himself, and then later comes to embody. See, what you will notice about the sequence titles in the Seer path are that sequence 8 and 7 are known as the Clown and the Magician, respectively. And thus the title of the Fool doesn't necessarily stray so far from the Seer path that it wouldn't allow for Klein to digest his potions. And thus Klein, by using a combination of divination, misdirection, and performance, embodies some of the core values of a Seer and therefore acts within the confines of what's acceptable for a Seer Beyonder. But another reason that Klein adopts this persona of the Fool, or the long version of the name, the Fool who does not belong to this era, is so that it can A, manipulate other Beyonders, and B, remain mysterious. Now, this is important because Klein operates almost entirely from the Gray Fog, where he's detached from fate, and therefore he needs other Beyonders to do his bidding, which is where his Tarot Club comes into play. See, the Tarot Club is a club headed up by Klein, filled with Beyonders who all take on the titles of certain tarot cards, like the Fool or the Hanged Man or the Sun, that all come from massively different parts of the world. Now, because everybody in the Tarot Club simply goes by names of tarot cards, they're all anonymous to each other, and thus Klein's identity is actually a mystery to all of the other members of the Tarot Club, and he exists as a proto-godhead to all of these other members. Now, as he is the person who controls the outer dimensional space that they all use, the Gray Fog, for meetings and passing of information, him being the proto-godhead does make a fair amount of sense. Now, it's in this Tarot Club that all of these Beyonders exchange information and help each other advance through their sequences, whether that be by trading Beyonder ingredients that allow for people to upgrade their sequences, or by giving each other mystical items. And it's from this Tarot Club that we're going to meet the 3 other very important characters in this story outside of Klein, who are known as Justice, the Hanged Man, and the Sun, also known as Audrey, Alger, and Derek. Now, these are 3 Beyonders that are all recruited into the Tarot Club by Klein, who all fall on different Beyonder paths, with Audrey Hall being in the Spectator path, a path that features psychologically and emotionally controlling the people around you, Alger Wilson being on the Wind-Blessed path, which is a path that's usually related to the storms and seas, and therefore is usually dedicated to those who spend their lives on the oceans, and lastly, Derek Berg, who's on the Sun path, a path dedicated to light and purification, usually held by the most pure of heart. And thus the story revolves around the ever-growing cast of tarot card members as they try to crack the code on occult mysteries that are happening in Tingen. However, like with the Apothecary Diaries, while the solving of mysteries does seem to be what happens on a day-to-day basis, the truest and most important takeaway from any of the parts of Lord of Mysteries are the character arcs. Whether that's Klein trying to rise to the top of the seer path and assume godhood, or Audrey Hall growing from a naive noble into a mature manipulator, what truly carries this story so much more than the mysteries is the characters who solve them, as they try to battle the horrors of a Victorian steampunk Lovecraftian horror universe that they live in, all the while trying to not lose their humanity. Because yes, the further you go into the sequences, the more godlike power you achieve, the less humanity you hold on to. So if any of this sounds even remotely interesting to you, the Lord of Mysteries anime is gonna start airing June 28th over on Crunchyroll, and not only is it gonna be available in Chinese, but apparently the dub will be available in 7 total languages. On top of this, it's gonna be animated by BC May Pictures, who are seemingly responsible for animating pretty much everything that comes out of China. Whether that be The King's Avatar, The Master of Diabolism, Fog Hill of the Five Elements, which is one of the most gorgeously animated things you'll ever watch in your entire life if you can find it, and now this, The Lord of Mysteries. And if you want to read everything that The Lord of Mysteries is going to cover in Season 1, I'd recommend reading Volume 1 over on Web Novel. It's the first 240 chapters of the story, which, once again, while that sounds like a lot, it's not as much as you think it is. I mean, it's still like a couple hours of reading, but it's not as crazy as 240 chapters sounds to the average person. But I want to hear from you guys. How many of you are excited for The Lord of Mysteries? Are you excited because you've read the web novel, or are you just excited because you've heard good things about it? Let me know in the comments below. That's why it goes down there. Please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. You know what I like about The Lord of Mysteries? I don't have to butcher Chinese name pronunciations and feel my girlfriend's hatred see through my heart from literally rooms away.